Hey everybody, let's get into homicide under Nevada law. We're going to talk about the Nevada distinctions of criminal law for the bar exam. So if you're taking the Nevada bar exam or you're just curious about Nevada law, this is the video for you. So let's dive into the Nevada distinctions when it comes down to homicide in the criminal law section of the bar exam. Our outline is this. We're going to first go through first degree murder, first degree felony murder, second degree felony murder, and involuntary manslaughter, which will be a segue into vehicular manslaughter, and then we'll finally conclude. So this is very straightforward. This is not really too complicated. And just to note that second degree murder and voluntary manslaughter, in other words, heat of passion, is basically the same as modern law, common law. Basically, what you learned during law school is the same definitions under Nevada law, for the exception, for the exception of imperfect self-defense. That is not recognized under Nevada law. Therefore, in your Nevada criminal law fact pattern, if you're dealing with a situation where they raise imperfect self-defense, that will not raise voluntary manslaughter. So imperfect self-defense is not applicable under Nevada law. Let's finally dive into first degree murder. First degree murder under Nevada law means that a deliberate and premeditated murder that was committed by means of poison, lying in wait, torture, or by any willful killing. You're probably thinking to yourself, what does this exactly mean? So we got to talk about deliberation and premeditation. Deliberation is basically a cold-blooded act made by the defendant towards the victim. So stabbing, shooting intentionally. That is an example of deliberation, and also having um, that thought process behind doing that act. Premeditation is very similar, as you can see with the second bullet point on this PowerPoint slide, is that premeditation is when the defendant reflected on the idea of killing, which means that the defendant thought about it and wanted to do it. The defendant told him or herself, I want to kill the victim. An example of this, Wiley makes dinner for Israel. Okay. He planned the dinner beforehand. He wanted to do it for Israel. However, Riley intentionally added rat poison to the dinner. So once Israel eats the dinner, he will die. As you can see through this example, Riley had the requisite intent to kill Israel. He wanted to do it. He desired to do it. He planned it before the actual killing has occurred. Therefore, premeditation is satisfied, and there is deliberation in the situation because not only did Riley think about the killing and he wanted to do it, but he also acted on it by adding poison to Israel's dinner and giving it to Israel. And when Israel eats it, he dies. As you can see in our first bullet point here, first degree murder includes poison. Therefore, in this example here, in the third PowerPoint, third bullet point, excuse me, Riley will in fact be liable for first degree murder under Nevada law. Another way to be liable for first degree murder under Nevada is that the defendant committed the act, the actual act, or attempted to commit the act of sexual assault, arson, kidnapping, robbery, child abuse, or abuse of an older person. These are other felonious acts that will count in regards to first degree murder. So again, if the defendant commits one of these acts or attempts to commit one of these acts and a killing occurs as a result of the act or attempted act of these underlying felonies, the defendant will be liable for first degree murder. Another example is, as you can see below, is that Israel blindfolds Riley and throws him into a truck. Israel drives the truck away. That is an example of kidnapping. So Israel committed the felony of kidnapping, and during the commission of that felony, he killed Riley. That is an example of Israel being liable for first degree murder because he committed the felony and he killed Riley. Therefore, Israel will be liable for first degree murder under Nevada law. Last but not least, the last thing to consider and think about when you're looking at a Nevada criminal law analysis when it comes on a first degree murder is this pretty big chunk of paragraph here, is that the murder was committed on the property of or at an activity sponsored by a public or private school or on a school bus while engaged in his official duties by a person who intended to create great risk of death or great bodily injury to more than one person by means of a weapon or a course of action that would be hazardous to the lives of more than one person. A clear example that we all know of, unfortunately, is a school shooter. So if a school shooter goes to a private public school or a bus while the bus driver is dropping off the kids to their homes or picking up the kids to go to school, and then someone uses some type of weapon, in this case a gun, to cause harm to more than one person, whether it's death or great bodily injury, that person, if the murder actually happens, someone actually dies because of that person's acts, that person will be liable for first degree murder. So again, think about the school shooter as a critical example when you think about this portion of the law that Nevada has for its first degree murder statute. And last but not least, an act of terrorism. 9/11 is a good example, right? As we all know, 9/11, a lot of people has died due to that act. And assuming that those murderers are still alive, they'll be liable for first degree murder under Nevada law because they committed an act of terror and they killed someone. So during that act, someone died, therefore they'll be liable for first degree murder. An attempted act of terrorism is another example that can allow someone to be liable for this crime. So let's finally get into the felony murder rule that has 2 degrees, a first degree and a second degree under Nevada law. So let's first go through first degree felony murder. So first degree felony murder is a very straightforward definition. Is any murder committed during the perpetration of an inherently dangerous felony. Any murder committed during the perpetration of an inherently dangerous felony, like robbery, like burglary, like arson. Those are examples of a murder being committed during that inherently dangerous felony, and that will trigger the first degree felony murder rule, and the defendant could be liable for that crime. In Nevada, the intent to commit that felony, let's say arson, must have happened either before the killing occurred or during the actual conduct of committing the felony that led to the victim's death. So again, if someone thought about committing that crime before it actually occurred, and then someone dies as a result of that crime, that is an example of someone being liable under the statute here. Another critical example is our third bullet point here. Nicole planned to commit a robbery at the Mall of America, the MOA, the Mall of America. So she thought about this crime before it actually happened because she planned it. The next day, Nicole committed the robbery. So she actually went through with the robbery. So she thought about it before it happened. She had the intent before to commit the robbery. Then the next day, she actually committed the crime. She committed the robbery. And during the perpetration of that felony, she shot a security guard, and the guard died. So as a result of Nicole committing this crime, this inherently dangerous felony, robbery, she shot and killed a guard, and this will trigger this statute, which will more than likely be culpable for first degree felony murder. Second degree felony murder is not raised often, but you have to memorize this to keep this in mind. Under Nevada law, there's such thing as second degree felony murder, which requires 2 elements. So Nevada Supreme Court stated that these 2 elements must be satisfied in order for a defendant to be culpable for second degree felony murder. The first element here is that the predicated felony must be inherently dangerous, where death or great bodily injury is directly foreseeable as an act, as a consequence of the felony. So again, for example, with Nicole, she must have committed a felony. Again, she committed a robbery, which is inherently dangerous, right? Because when you commit a robbery and she had a gun and she was dangerous to possibly kill somebody or cause great bodily injury, clearly she has a gun, she's committing a robbery. It's possible that someone could die during the commission of that felony, or someone could at least suffer great bodily injury, because getting shot is great bodily injury. So by all means, the first element will be satisfied with Nicole. And this is the second element, the last element must be proven, is that there must be an immediate and direct causal relationship between the defendant's act, Nicole's act, and the victim's death, the security guard. So it's very clear that there was a immediate and direct causal relationship between Nicole's act of robbing the Mall of America and the guard's death, because she was committing the robbery. She had a possession of a gun, and while committing that robbery, the security guard died as a result because she decided to shoot him in order to prevent herself from getting caught. Right? So it's very clear that there was a relationship, a causal relationship between Nicole's act of robbing the Mall of America and the security guard's death. Involuntary manslaughter. Basically, in Nevada, it's the most common is vehicular manslaughter. So let's dive into exactly what that means. So the defendant must have been driving a vehicle, or the defendant was in actual physical control of a vehicle on a highway. What does this exactly mean? So this means that the defendant was driving his or her car. It could be a truck, it could be your sedan, whatever the case may be. You must be driving the vehicle or be in actual physical control of the vehicle while you're on the highway. So again, it must be on the highway in the second aspect of this rule. And the act must approximately cause the death of another person through an act or omission to act, which means that the act of driving was the proximate cause to why the person died. So again, obviously, if you're driving in the highway and you hit someone because you were negligent, clearly it's directly foreseeable that that person was going to die. And the act was constitutes simple negligence. So again, as you all know, with involuntary manslaughter in general, criminal negligence is a key thing that will lead to a defendant being liable for this crime. But in this situation with vehicular manslaughter, the defendant must have been negligent while driving, and the defendant must have been actually driving his or her vehicle and be in physical control of it. And the act of driving negligently on the road must be a direct and foreseeable consequence of the person's death. So clearly, as you can see in our example, in our last bullet point here, Kenzie was texting while driving, and then a pedestrian died. She strikes a pedestrian, and that pedestrian died. So clearly, texting while driving is negligent, because as a driver, you must be paying attention to the road. You can't be using your phone while driving, because you will not understand what's going on, because you have to keep your eyes on the road. Correct? Therefore, because she was texting while driving and she killed a pedestrian while driving in a negligent manner, she could be liable for involuntary manslaughter, vehicular manslaughter under Nevada law. In conclusion, if you have any questions, comment below. And if you have any concerns in regards to the first versus second degree felony murder rules, comment below as well, because those two might be the hairy parts of this presentation, because it seems like first degree murder and vehicular manslaughter, I think those are the most straightforward rules. But first and second degree is substantially different. So again, if you have any questions, comment below. I'm more than willing to answer. And thank you so much for watching. And we'll get into criminal procedure in the following video.